What if the people who were supposed to love you sold you like trash? Not to a stranger. Not to an enemy. Your own family. Your own blood. They looked you in the eyes, smiled, and handed you over to a dungeon that had swallowed thousands of men whole. No weapon. No skills. No system. Just you. Alone. In the dark. Most people would die in the first 5 minutes. But Kael? Kael didn't die. And when he walked back out of that dungeon, he didn't come back as a survivor. He came back as its owner. This is the story of a boy who was thrown away like garbage and returned as something the world had never seen before. Let's get into it. Our story takes place in the kingdom of Arenthos, a world where every person, on their 16th birthday, receives a system. The system is everything. It gives you your stats, your skills, your class, your purpose. STRAGI. Int. Vit. Luck. 5 numbers that decide whether you become a noble hunter, a powerful mage, a celebrated warrior, or nothing. The dungeons appeared across the kingdom 200 years ago. Massive underground labyrinths filled with monsters, traps, and treasures beyond imagination. The stronger your system, the deeper you can go. The deeper you go, the richer and more powerful you become. The top hunters? They're basically gods walking among men. The Dungeon Association ranks hunters from F all the way to SSS. Only 3 people in history have ever reached SSS rank. Now, the noble families? They have a special trick. When a dungeon is too dangerous to send a real hunter in first, they send in what's called a bait runner. Someone with no combat ability whose only job is to walk into the dungeon first, trigger the traps, wake up the monsters, and die. It buys the real hunters 10, maybe 15 seconds of safety. Bait runners don't come back. Everyone knows this. And yet, there's never a shortage of bait runners. Because the noble families make sure of it. Meet Kael Dawnhart, 15 years old. Son of Lord Aldrich Dawnhart, one of the most powerful noble hunters in the kingdom. On the surface, Kael should have had everything. Rich family. Famous father. Noble bloodline. But Kael had a secret. He had been tested early, illegally, behind closed doors, and the results had terrified his family. His system potential was rated as undefined. Not F rank. Not even G rank. Undefined. A reading the system testers had never seen before. A blank. A void. His father looked at that result, and never looked at Kael the same way again. From that day forward, Kael wasn't treated as a son. He was treated as a liability. His younger half-brother, Dorian, had S-rank potential. Their father poured everything into Dorian: training, resources, the best instructors, rare skill books. Kael, he was given a room in the servants' quarters. Fed scraps. Made to do chores. The servants didn't even bother hiding their contempt. If Lord Dawnhart doesn't care about the boy, why should they? The only person who was kind to Kael was an old groundskeeper named Aaron, a retired F-rank hunter with a bad leg and a warm heart. Every evening, Aaron would share his dinner with Kael and tell him stories about dungeons. "The dungeon doesn't care about your rank, boy," Aaron would say. "It only cares about your will. You'd be surprised what a man can survive when he has a reason to." Kael held on to those words. They were the only warmth in his life. On the morning of Kael's 16th birthday, he woke up early, heart pounding. Today was the day he'd receive his system. Today, everything could change. He imagined standing before his father with a rare skill. An S-rank class. Something that would finally make Lord Dawnhart see him as his son. He got dressed in his best clothes, the ones he'd been saving for months. He walked to the System Awakening Hall. He placed his hand on the crystal. The room went silent. The crystal glowed. Then it flickered. And on the official readout, in plain letters for everyone to see: System Awakening failed. User Kael Dawnhart. Class none. Stats 0/0/0/0/0/0. Skill none. The hall erupted in laughter. Even the system tester looked embarrassed. 0 across the board. No class. No skill. Not even an F-rank awakening. A complete system failure. Something that happened maybe once in 1,000 awakenings. Kael stood there, staring at the readout, his face burning. And in the back of the crowd, his father turned away without a word. That night, Lord Dawnhart called Kael into his study. Kael thought maybe his father would offer him comfort. A different path. Something. Instead, his father slid a document across the desk. "Sign this." Kael looked at it. It was a dungeon labor contract, the legal document used to register a bait runner. His own father was selling him to the Ironmaw Dungeon. one of the most brutal, high-mortality dungeons in the region. A place that had killed over 300 hunters in the past year alone. "You have no system," his father said coldly. "You are of no use to this family. The Dungeon Association will pay me for your registration. Consider it your contribution to the Dawnhart name." Kael stared at him. "Father, sign it." Kael's hands were shaking. He thought about running. He thought about screaming. He thought about Aaron, the only person who'd ever been kind to him. Then he picked up the pen and signed. Because what choice did he have? He was escorted out that same night. No goodbye. No last meal. His half-brother Dorian watched from the staircase with a small smile on his face. As they took Kael away, he looked back at the house he'd grown up in. He made himself a single promise. "I will come back. And when I do, nothing will be the same." The Ironmaw Dungeon. Even the name sounds like death. The entrance is a massive iron gate built into the side of a mountain, permanently rusted open, like a jaw that never closes. The air around it smells like blood and sulfur. Kael was brought there at dawn with 11 other bait runners. A sad, ragged group of people with either no system or rock-bottom F-rank stats. People who had been sold, tricked, or simply had nowhere else to go. A dungeon official handed each of them a torch and a single iron dagger. "Your job is simple," he said flatly. "Enter first. Walk ahead of the hunting party. If you trigger a trap, call out. If you encounter a monster, call out. You will be compensated upon exit." Everyone knew compensated upon exit was a lie. Nobody expected them to exit. The Dawnhart hunting party stood behind them. 30 professional hunters in gleaming armor, loaded with skills and equipment. Kael spotted his father among them. Lord Dawnhart didn't even glance in his direction. The gate opened. The bait runners walked in. Within the first 10 minutes, 3 of them were dead. A spike trap took 2. A sudden monster ambush from the ceiling got the 3rd. The hunters behind them calmly noted the trap locations and stepped around them. Kael ran. Not away, there was nowhere to go, but sideways, through a narrow crack in the dungeon wall that the other runners had ignored. The crack led to a small chamber. Dark. Silent. Empty. He pressed himself against the wall, breathing hard, listening to the screams echoing from the main corridor. He stayed there for hours. At some point he passed out from exhaustion. When he woke up, he was alone. The dungeon had gone quiet. The hunting party was gone. He had been left behind. With no food. No water. No way out. Most people would have sat down and accepted death. Kael stood up, gripped his iron dagger, and walked deeper into the dungeon. "I promised I'd come back," he said to no one. "I'm not dying here." He walked for what felt like hours, navigating by torchlight through narrow passages. The dungeon was massive, a labyrinth of stone corridors, hidden chambers, and underground caverns that seemed to go on forever. He found a small stream of underground water and drank from it. He killed a small dungeon rat, the weakest possible monster, with his dagger, and forced himself to eat it raw. With 0 stats. No skills. No class. Just survival instinct. On the 3rd day, starving, exhausted, barely conscious, Kael stumbled into a chamber unlike anything else in the dungeon. It was enormous. The ceiling stretched hundreds of feet overhead. The walls were covered in glowing blue runes. And in the center of the chamber, sitting on a raised platform made of pure black stone, was a throne. Not a monster. Not a treasure chest. A throne. And above the throne, floating in midair, glowing with a light so bright it hurt to look at, was a single message. Dungeon core detected. This dungeon has been without an owner for 847 years. A new claimant has entered the core chamber. Warning. Claiming this dungeon will bond the core to your soul. The bond is permanent and cannot be broken. Do you wish to claim ownership of Ironmaw Dungeon? Yes/no. Kael stared at the message for a long time. He thought about his father. About Dorian's smile. About being thrown away. He walked up to the throne. He sat down. And he pressed yes. The world exploded in light. The pain was indescribable. It felt like the entire dungeon was being poured into his body at once. Every corridor, every chamber, every trap, every monster, every stone and root and droplet of water. He screamed. And then it stopped. And a new screen appeared before his eyes. But this wasn't like any system readout anyone had ever seen. System override detected. Reason. Dungeon core bonding with incompatible user. Standard system. Failed to initialize. Initiating emergency protocol. Dungeon Lord system. User. Kael Dawnhart. Title. Dungeon Lord Ironmaw. class, Sovereign of the Deep, unique/legendary. Stats recalculated STR, 847 AGI, 847 int, 847 vit, 847 luck, 847. Reason: stat value equals years dungeon core was unclaimed. Skills unlocked. Dungeon Dominion, full control over all monsters, traps, and structures within claimed dungeon monster taming. Instantly tame any dungeon monster and convert it to your servant dungeon expansion. Extend the boundaries of your dungeon at will. Soul Harvest. Absorb the essence of defeated enemies to permanently increase stats. Phantom Walk. Move through dungeon walls as if they don't exist. Dungeon Gate. Create a personal portal connecting any 2 points inside or outside your dungeon. Dungeon Lord unique ability unlocked. Sovereign's Claim. Any person, building, or resource that enters your dungeon can be permanently claimed as your property. Kael read the screen 3 times. 847 in every stat. The highest anyone in the kingdom had ever recorded was 412. A legendary SSS rank hunter named the Iron Emperor. Kael had more than double that, across every single stat, and he hadn't even started leveling up yet. He sat on the throne in silence for a long moment. Then slowly, a smile spread across his face. The first real smile he'd had in years. He stood up. Dungeon Dominion. Every monster in the Ironmaw Dungeon, thousands of creatures across dozens of floors, froze simultaneously. Their red eyes flickered. And then, one by one, they all turned toward the core chamber and bowed. Kael looked around at his dungeon. His dungeon. "All right," he said quietly. "Let's get to work." Over the next 3 months, Kael transformed the Ironmaw Dungeon completely. Using Dungeon Dominion, he reorganized every floor, redirecting traps, repositioning monsters, creating hidden chambers filled with rare resources the hunters had never found because they never got deep enough. He used monster taming to build an army. Not just weak dungeon rats. The Ironmaw had creatures that had been growing unchecked for 847 years. Ancient iron golems 30 feet tall. Shadow panthers that could turn invisible. A dragon turtle on floor 47 that hadn't been seen by any human in over a century. All of them knelt to Kael. He used Soul Harvest on the dungeon's defeated monsters, absorbing their essence. His stats climbed. 1,000, 1,500, 2,000, 3,000, 3,847. He used dungeon expansion to extend the dungeon's territory, secretly underground, until it stretched beneath the nearby city of Varenhold. He used Dungeon Gate to slip out of the dungeon at night, entering the city invisible, learning everything he could about what had changed in the 3 months since he'd disappeared. What he learned made his blood run cold. His father had reported him as lost in the Ironmaw Dungeon. A tragic accident. The Dawnhart family had held a small memorial. Dorian had been formally declared the family heir. Nobody was looking for him. Nobody mourned him. To the world, Kael Dawnhart was already dead. Good, Kael thought. Let them think that a little longer. He also discovered that the Ironmaw Dungeon had been listed for a massive hunting expedition. A joint operation between the Dawnhart family and 3 other noble houses, planned for 2 months from now. The goal was to clear the dungeon completely, harvest its core, and sell it to the Dungeon Association for an enormous sum. Harvesting the core would destroy the dungeon. And since the core was now bonded to Kael's soul, it would kill him. His father knew exactly what he was doing. This wasn't just about selling off a useless son anymore. His father was trying to finish the job. Kael sat in his throne room, his army of monsters around him, and felt something shift inside him. He had been planning to reveal himself slowly, carefully, make his father suffer the way he had suffered, slowly, methodically, watching everything he'd built crumble piece by piece. Now he accelerated the timeline. 2 months wasn't enough time for patience. It was enough time for war. Kael's first move was elegant. The Dawnhart family's wealth came primarily from 3 sources: their dungeon contracts, their monster material trading business, and a series of noble estates built on land that, Kael now realized, sat directly above his expanded dungeon territory. Using Sovereign's Claim, anything that entered his dungeon became his property. So Kael opened hidden passages beneath the Dawnhart trading warehouses and let his shadow panthers slip in at night. By morning, the Dawnhart family's entire stock of grade A monster materials, worth millions of gold, had vanished without a trace. No broken locks. No signs of entry. Just gone. The trading company collapsed within a week. Then Kael targeted the dungeon contracts. He used Dungeon Dominion to quietly make the dungeons the Dawnhart family operated contracts for more dangerous. Traps that reset faster. Monsters that respawned with higher stats. Nothing obviously supernatural, just subtle, consistent, escalating difficulty. Hunters started dying on Dawnhart contracts. The Dungeon Association began investigating. 2 of the 3 other noble houses pulled out of their agreements with Lord Dawnhart. Then came the social blow. Kael had spent weeks watching and listening through his dungeon's expanded underground network. He knew every secret the noble families were hiding. Affairs, bribes, illegal dungeon operations, murders disguised as dungeon accidents. He had it all written down. He sent the documents, anonymously, to the kingdom's investigative bureau. Within a month, Lord Dawnhart was summoned for questioning. Kael watched from the shadows as his father, for the first time in his life, looked genuinely afraid. It was a good start, but Kael wasn't finished. Not even close. The day of the great Ironmaw expedition arrived. For noble houses, 200 hunters. The finest equipment money could buy. They gathered at the Iron Gate at dawn, confident and loud. This was supposed to be a formality, a powerful force clearing a dungeon that, according to their intelligence, had been weakened and partially cleared by previous expeditions. Lord Dawnhart stood at the front, armor gleaming, looking every inch the powerful patriarch. Dorian stood beside him, his S-rank system crackling with energy, eager for his first major dungeon conquest. The gate opened. They walked in, and the dungeon sealed behind them. Every entrance, every exit, every escape route, sealed. The torches along the walls lit up one by one, not with orange flame, but with cold blue dungeon light. And from every shadow, from every corridor, from every ceiling and floor and crack in the stone, monsters emerged. Not the weak creatures the expedition had expected. Ancient iron golems. Shadow panthers. Things that hadn't been seen in centuries. An army. The hunters froze. Then a voice echoed through every chamber of the dungeon simultaneously. Calm. Quiet. Completely without anger. Welcome to my dungeon. Lord Dawnhart's face went white. He knew that voice. From the throne at the center of the core chamber, projected via dungeon gate as a shimmering image visible across all floors. Kael Dawnhart sat calmly, elbows on his knees, looking down at his father. He looked different. 3 months in the dungeon had changed him. Taller. Leaner. His eyes carried something they hadn't before, a weight, and beneath it, absolute certainty. Kael, his father started. Lord Dawnhart. Kael's voice was perfectly polite. You're trespassing on my property. The hunters looked at each other. A boy. A dead boy. Sitting on a dungeon throne. Your system failed. Dorian snapped, his voice shaking despite himself. You have nothing. You're nothing. Kael tilted his head slightly. Dungeon Dominion. Every monster in the dungeon took 1 step forward simultaneously. 200 hunters raised their weapons. I wouldn't, Kael said. Silence. Here's what's going to happen, Kael continued, his voice carrying through every corridor with perfect clarity. Every hunter here who did not know they were participating in an assassination attempt against me. You are free to go. The dungeon will open a path for you. You have 5 minutes. A beat of silence. Then about 160 of the hunters started moving. Fast, relieved, not looking back. The Dawnhart family's personal guard stayed. Some out of loyalty. Most because Lord Dawnhart was blocking the exit. Kael watched until the last of the innocent hunters were gone. Then he looked at his father. Just us now. Lord Dawnhart drew his weapon, a legendary-grade sword that crackled with lightning. Even in the face of what he was seeing, decades of arrogance wouldn't let him bow. You think you've won, he said. You're a child playing at power. The Dungeon Association will. The Dungeon Association, Kael interrupted calmly, received documentation this morning of your illegal bait runner contracts, your fraudulent dungeon reports, and your conspiracy to murder your own son. He paused. They're currently at your estate. Lord Dawnhart's sword arm dropped slightly. As for this dungeon, yes, it's bonded to my soul. You knew that when you planned this expedition. You were going to harvest the core and kill me. Kael stood up from his throne. So I want you to understand something very clearly, Father. He stepped forward. His stats were at 3,847 now. Every monster he'd absorbed for 3 months adding to the total. You threw me away because my system said 0. His voice didn't shake. You handed me to a dungeon to die because I was inconvenient. He looked at his father directly. The dungeon didn't kill me. It chose me. Lord Dawnhart attacked. The lightning sword came down with every ounce of power the old man had. Kael raised one hand. Dungeon Dominion. The stone floor erupted. Iron chains, part of the dungeon's very structure, shot from the walls and wrapped around Lord Dawnhart's arms, his legs, his sword arm, binding him completely before the blade came anywhere close. The old man struggled, screamed. His stats meant nothing here. This was Kael's dungeon. Every wall, every stone, every inch of it answered to Kael alone. Dorian tried to run. He made it 3 steps before the Shadow Panthers had him pinned to the floor, growling softly. Kael walked forward until he stood directly in front of his father. He looked at him for a long moment. "I'm not going to kill you," he said finally. "That's not what this is." He reached out. "Sovereign's claim. I'm going to..." 1 year later, the Ironmaw Dungeon, renamed the Sovereign's Keep, was recognized by the Dungeon Association as a unique grade dungeon, the only one in the kingdom with a living dungeon lord. Kael Dawnhart, now simply known as Sovereign Kael, had become the most powerful figure in the kingdom without ever formally entering politics. He didn't need to. Every dungeon in the region operated under his authorization. Every noble family who had participated in his father's schemes had been absorbed, one by one, under Sovereign's claim. Their estates, their contracts, their wealth, all of it his. Lord Aldrich Dawnhart spent the rest of his days in a cell within the dungeon, not tortured, not harmed, just contained, watching every day as the empire he'd built with cruelty and contempt was run better, richer, and more powerfully by the son he'd thrown away. Dorian was stripped of his S-rank status. Kael had discovered that the noble families had ways of artificially inflating system rankings, and Dorian's true rank was a very average B. He was sent to work as a junior hunter under someone else's contract. No special treatment, just ordinary life. The old groundskeeper Aaron was found still working at the Dawnhart estate when Kael's people took it over. Kael personally came to find him. He gave Aaron the estate. All of it. The house, the grounds, the staff. Aaron laughed until he cried. "I always knew you had something in you, boy," he said. "You were the only one," Kael said. And somewhere beneath the kingdom, in the core chamber of his dungeon, the throne that had waited 847 years for a worthy owner sat occupied at last. A boy who had been sold as bait, who had returned as a god. And that is the story of Kael Dawnhart, the boy with 0 stats who became the dungeon lord. The trash his own family threw away, who came back owning everything they had. If you made it this far, you're exactly the kind of person who loves a good revenge arc, and honestly, same. Drop a comment below telling me which part hit the hardest. Was it when his father made him sign the contract? When the system gave him 847 in every stat? Or when he walked back in and said, "Welcome to my dungeon"? Don't forget to like and subscribe if you want more Manhwa recaps like this one. I'll see you in the next one.